Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Brian Galicia with Microsoft. I lead our Dynamics 365 ecosystem here, and it's an honor and pleasure to be hosting Steve from Forceworks, who's a longtime Microsoft MVP, but also leads a amazing ISV that we're going to have a conversation about. But so before we get to Steve, let me do a quick orientation of the purpose of the ISV Success live show. We used to call it ISV Connect, but as many of you know who are watching prior shows in the start of our fiscal year, we actually moved ISV Connect and merged it with our overall ISV Success program. And so this show is really about highlighting amazing ISVs like Forceworks in our ecosystem for people to get to know the IP and the solutions and the people that work at these amazing ISVs. And also an opportunity to ask questions. And so during the conversation, if there's a question that you might have of Steve, feel free to ask it. But the other thing that we do is we love to see the interaction. So wherever you're watching, actually Steve's doing this from Brazil. I'm actually working remotely here in Portland, Oregon. You might notice for any of you who watch the show, I usually do this from my home office, but I'm actually here remotely this week. And then if there's a conversation that's really piquing your interest as we're having the dialogue, you can use the LinkedIn window to put a like or support or one of the emojis just to give Steve and I some context that the content is actually resonating. But we'd actually love to hear where you're watching from. So if you just want to type in the window, maybe you're watching from somewhere in the US, somewhere in Latin America, somewhere in Europe, somewhere in Asia, we'd love to hear where you're watching from, and we will do a quick shout out the towards the beginning of the conversation. But that being said, Steve, thank you so much for making the time. It's great to have you part of the show. So as we get started, the one thing, of course, I always start out with my guest speakers are, what's your role? And of course, you are the CEO of Forceworks. You can talk a little bit about your day-to-day. And then my favorite question I always ask the guests on my show to get people to get to know you a little bit better is, what's one thing on your not on your LinkedIn profile that you're sharing, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. My duties as CEO of Forceworks are to delegate everything I can possibly delegate to other people to do. I'm trying to retire in place without actually leaving the business. Just retire the amount of work that I'm doing, because I've been doing a lot of things between our ISV solutions and our services business. Business has been very good. These past couple of years has really been a little bit crazy. We've grown the team significantly, and brought in more people in more leadership positions, so I can start to kind of delegate out some of that stuff and actually enjoy Brazil instead of just sitting here in this under construction office, 10 hours a day. One thing people probably don't know about me, well, some people do, is that I'm an avid motorcycle fan.
Mhm.
Before I left the U.S. back in October, I had a great big Indian, like those big bagger motorcycles, weighed like 1,800 pounds. Riding that around with my wife all over the area, and I had a sport bike, a racing bike. Unfortunately, both of those were going to cost too much to ship to Brazil, so I sold them and ended up replacing it with a scooter. Um, which I've now already again replaced with something bigger. So I haven't left the motorcycle stuff. As much as my wife would like me to just get over it, I haven't got over it yet. So big into motorcycles.
I love it. Yeah, and I can imagine we were just having during the pre-show talking about how in Brazil, for anyone who'd never been to Sao Paulo or other places, of course, being a very large city, the traffic is super bad, and being able to navigate is much quicker on two wheels than four wheels. So it's good that you're still avidly trying to figure out a ways to get on a motorbike versus just trying to get driving a car.
And definitely not as brave as the locals. I mean, I ride the motorcycle the same way I did in the US, like it's a car. I take up the space of a car. The motorcycles down here are a lot of kids. A huge industry down here, bigger than even in the US, is food delivery, which
Mm.
is all done by motorcycles. And of course, the faster they can deliver your food, the more deliveries they can make and the more money they make. So they are taking every shortcut, going between cars, going extremely fast to make these deliveries. So the entire city is just a a nightmare of speedy motorcycles, these big cooler backpacks on. It's amazing to me that the police don't seem to care. Nobody seems to care. It's a pretty crazy, just one of the crazy aspects of a completely different culture.
Yeah, well, I love it. Yeah, being immersed in it because I've been, as we were talking about, I've been there myself. But yeah, thank you for making the intro. I'm going to do a quick shout out to the people watching. So for some reason, sometimes LinkedIn doesn't show up, but Brandon, I see you. I can see you on I'm looking down my phone. So Brandon, thank you for watching from Park City, Utah. We have Dennis, and thanks, Dennis, because I noticed you've been on watching several shows in the past. So thank you, Dennis, for watching from India. We have Luz watching from Seattle. I'm normally in Seattle, Washington, but I'm remote this week. We have John from Cincinnati, so thank you for watching. And then Ajlan, hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. So again, thank you for watching. It's super late in India, so truly appreciate you listening and taking the time to have the dialogue and listen to the dialogue between Steve and I. So why don't we get started, Steve? Maybe you can touch upon, of course, for anyone who's never met or heard of Forceworks before, maybe you can describe a little bit. What are the business outcomes that you provide? And I should have did a little shout out because, of course, you on your title, MVP. And for those of you who don't know what that means, that's what's called a Microsoft Valuable Professional. And these are people in our ecosystem that don't work at Microsoft, but are so tightly in tune with what we're doing. And Steve's been a long-time MVP. And Forceworks, as he describes, was one of the original ISVs that actually published into our app source when we started to develop and have app source. And Steve can go into detail, but maybe you can go into what does Forceworks do? What are the business outcomes that you provide, Steve?
Sure. I can remember when we first published to App Source that it wasn't showing up, and I kept asking the team, "How come it's not showing up?" And they said, "Well, we need to get a minimum number of ISVs in here because we can't very well launch a marketplace with like 5 apps." And I remember that frustrating time waiting and out there talking to other ISVs. But come on, jump in, because I need to get critical mass of ISVs in there in order for you guys to make App Source public way back in the day. Firstworks is a CRM services, project services organization. The name is interesting because we started out as Salesforce partners 20 years ago, longer than that. Back shortly after Salesforce launched, we jumped on and were Salesforce partners for a long time. That's how we got the play on words Forceworks. And when Microsoft launched Dynamics CRM Online, we kind of took a look at it, like any Salesforce partner, looking to make fun of what Microsoft was doing in our space. But I saw some opportunity there with Dynamics. At the time, it wasn't as refined. It certainly didn't have the market share, didn't have anything. But a lot of the on-premise partners that had worked Dynamics historically seemed to be reluctant to move to the cloud. So we were one of the first partners to come on to Microsoft and start pushing the online version of that product. And I had been told that that first year, we sold more Dynamics CRM Online than any other partner, which sounds pretty impressive, but actually it wasn't a lot. It took a little bit of a chug to get the partner community to start thinking cloud. Obviously now that's ancient history. It's one of the fastest growing products in the Microsoft portfolio, and every partner's working with that. We stopped servicing Salesforce, I don't know, back a decade ago, and have been exclusively Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform since that time. We saw an opportunity in the early days to create a solution targeting more smaller customers that were struggling a little bit with the complexity and power of Dynamics, because it's a very powerful application and it can be a little intimidating, a little overwhelming. So we built a product that we called Rapid Start CRM that sat on top of Dynamics and really just sought to hide complexity, right? Just hide a bunch of buttons, bring it down to kind of its core essence of a sales and service app that a smaller business could actually have success with. And we had quite a bit of success with that solution. That's the solution we actually originally put into AppSource way back. We've since moved that solution off of Dynamics and directly onto the platform. So Dynamics is not a requirement anymore. Now it just runs by itself. And most recently, we switched that solution from a free solution, which was designed primarily to drive potential project services, to a freemium solution that has a low cost for people who want to do more customization, stuff like that. And we've gone on and added quite a few add-ons to that solution for some basic core workloads like project management, field service, time tracking, some things like that. So that's kind of where we are today. We've got about, I don't know, about maybe 10 apps in AppSource. Again, our flagship app, and then most of the others are add-ons to that.
Yeah, I love it, Steve. I mean, what a great kind of intro that talks about the journey and the solutions you have, because we have a variety of ISVs, and your solution is cross-industry. I mean, maybe you can touch upon, is there any scenarios that you've seen where your various IP has driven to a specific industry, or would you this focus is your focus, hey, anyone who has these scenarios to get started with a scenario and solution and build from there. You could do a little commentary so people can understand a little bit about, is the solution industry focus or industry agnostic?
Yeah, you know, when we first built the solution, our goal was, let's take this application that Microsoft has and make a simpler version for anybody who needs a simpler version for whatever reason. Either their needs are simpler, they are smaller, any reason they need it simpler. We launched that solution and achieved a lot of success with that solution before Microsoft moved forward with the industry focus. So we're several years into this, and then Microsoft says, hey, we're going to go vertical by industry, and all of you ISVs really should be thinking about vertical. And that's something we kind of struggled with, because we already had traction, already had IP built that was horizontal. Looking back, if I could do it again, knowing what I know now, we might have paid more attention to a specific vertical. I know many of my ISV friends out there have very industry specific vertical solutions and do very well. But we kind of had already, the horse had left the barn for us to be able to do that. But we do have lots of different kinds of, I can't think of a single particular vertical that has gravitated towards the solution. It seems to be in any kind of business has been using it. The thing they seem to have in common is they're looking for a simpler way to get started on a platform, just some way to get in, or they know that their needs are going to be significantly custom. They're going to have a lot of custom needs. They got a lot of problems they want to solve with the platform, that they would have to build custom tables, custom relationships, custom workflows to accomplish whatever it is they're trying to do, which may have nothing to do with sales or service. And in that case, they're really looking for where can we start, to build our ultimate solution. And we don't really need a lot of the stuff that's in Dynamics, because that's sales and marketing and et cetera focused. We're looking to build something completely different, but we don't want to start from zero. So that's been another big part for us, is people are just wanting to build really bespoke things. And as you know, the platform, I mean, that's what Dynamics is built on, right? So we've got all of the same potential capabilities in the platform to build whatever it is you want. And we've seen some customers build some pretty incredible stuff. We have an example of the company called VFriends, which is an NFT company. It's owned by a fellow named Gary Vaynerchuk, who is, kind of an internet guy, internet marketing guy. And they were looking for a way to be able to integrate something with their blockchain technology, where they were selling these NFTs, to be able to do things like keep track of who has them, keep track of things like shirt sizes for gifts, keep track of, they do an event every year, their big VCon event, keep track of registrations. So it wasn't anything out of the box that anybody had, I mean, much less connected to the blockchain. But, they started with Rapid Start, really it's just a foundation on the platform. And then everything else has been built custom to make this extremely custom solution, very, very specific to their needs.
Gosh, what an amazing story. I hadn't heard that story before, Steve, because when I think about it, because I know him it goes by Gary V, at least that's how I think about it when he's online. Yeah, and it's amazing because he's such an entrepreneur across many things. He started in, I think it's wines. He started his his business under his family and has grown dramatically because he's just a no nonsense person that talks about how entrepreneurs can do it. And I love it because it aligns pretty well to when I think about some of the IP. We'll get to that towards the end of the conversation, the next steps. But a lot of your IP is denoted as rapid start. And so it totally makes sense of what you just described because there are needs out there, and you can correct me wrong, but there are needs out there from many different companies that don't necessarily align to sales or customer service, like the concept of that with traditional CRM or what we call customer engagement. But they do have business process. They have a scenario that's going to take a customer or whatever they call it through a business process journey. And how do you do that? And that's where your IP really comes in because it gives these potential buyers an opportunity to utilize not necessarily Dynamics that could or the Power Platform to go extend it. Would that be a kind of a fair kind of summary to kind of have people really think about Forceworks?
That's kind of the essence of Microsoft's ISV ambitions is we're going to build a platform. We're going to cover some primary common workloads, sales, service, marketing, etc. But there's a ton of white space that we're never going to get into. We're never going to get down to that level. And this is where Microsoft needs the ISVs to come in and fill those gaps. And there's lots of ISVs that have created solutions to fill gaps that are maybe too narrow for Microsoft to focus on. But then there are customers whose needs don't fit any of that. Like the blockchain guy. There's nothing he could go buy off the shelf. Gary Vee can't go plug in his credit card and get something that will connect to his blockchain. It just doesn't exist. And it's not a large enough market for an ISV to have built a specific solution for that scenario. So this is where, the big customization comes into play on lots of different stuff. We're building a church management system because apparently the only ones out there are kind of archaic and old, and like a lot of old line of business applications, they don't have the power, the pizzazz that people are looking for today. So we've got a lot of customers looking at, we want to kind of rebuild what we're doing with this 80s, generation software solution I've been using forever that doesn't have mobile capabilities, doesn't do anything, but it's mission critical. And there's not really a solution out there specific for those folks. There are lots. There's solutions out there for association management that people have built. There are definitely lots of ISV solutions that are pretty targeted, but to a pretty wide audience. But there's still this huge number of customers that don't fit in any of those buckets. And rapid start for them really just gives them, okay, we've got a data model, we've got some apps, we've got some settings area, we've got workflow engine, we've got security model, we got a head start to be able to then build whatever the heck we want. And that's really been the best part of the market for us is those wanting to build crazy stuff.
Yeah, I love it, Steve, because no one. That's the beauty of business applications. Is that no one size fits all because every business process is going to be unique, and I think that's the great niche that you and your organization built. Because there are going to be some companies out there that do need the traditional scenarios because they're in financial services, manufacturing, or whatever, and they have I need to go lead to cash, like very common scenario, or quote to cash, very common scenario for a lot of customers that. Then they could just take more core dynamics, of course, with the relevant ISVs out there that follow those very industries. But in your case, you're taking that to where a blockchain. Is there a blockchain solution out there? Not necessarily, but the platform is there versus building it on, which is great because a lot of people go the Azure route. They go, I'm just going to take something and start from scratch. And I'm like, you could do that, but it's much harder versus what you've done, taking something. And I love the concept that and it makes sense now because I'm like, I wonder why Steve and team called it rapid start, but now I know why. Because taking something from
kind of wrap it in.
Yeah, I love it. So you touched upon because one of the questions I always ask guys is the journey that you've taken, and it's great because you've been on this long-standing journey with Microsoft. Through it. So what are some of the things maybe as you've seen and maybe what's take it at like what are some of the things that you and your organization are doing? Because you of course participated in Inspire and there was a lot of conversation around AI And maybe you could talk about, are there anything that you and Forceworks are doing that maybe using generative AI or other places that you might be taking advantage of the Microsoft Cloud besides just, of course, Dynamics and Power Platform?
I think probably as most SIs today, we're in that mode of exploring and understanding. Understanding what it can do, what it can't do, what it will do in the near future, and trying to think about the best places to apply that. I know there definitely are some partners that are well down that path that have, planted a flag on AI and are going very deep. I'm on the distribution lists or MVPs for AI, and it's a very busy channel, lots of conversation. But
Yep.
I think most partners are in a kind of figure it out stage. We're seeing some things come in with co-pilots, all over the place, and starting to get a handle on what this thing can and can't do. And as an ISV, you start thinking about, okay, I see what Microsoft has done here with this co-pilot. What would a co-pilot be able to do for our blockchain solution?
That's right.
For example, you start trying to map over things that it can do and things that it can't do. And the other thing is that it's moving so quickly that you get a little nervous that if we go out too quickly and launch something, it's going to be old next week, and we will have wasted a bunch of energy and time building something that's going to be outdated almost immediately. And that's something as an ISV you have to think about is where you invest your time and dollars and making sure that the investment you're making has a long enough life to recover your costs. And sometimes in those early days with new technologies, that's pretty risky. So you find yourself doing a lot of poking with a stick, a lot of looking at it, experimenting with some friendly customers on some things. That's kind of where we are on the AI journey, and I think it's probably common of a lot of partners in general, not just ISVs. We're all kind of poking it with a stick.
Well, I love it. Yeah, I mean, because it is a journey that we're all taking together with our ecosystem, and yeah, we're just scratching the surface and more use cases, and that relatively of it, what makes sense for your business, and then of course the biggest value is what does it do to our joint customers. So before we get to kind of the wrap of the call, we're about 7 minutes left, and you touched upon an example with blockchain and Gary Vee's organization. But what are some other scenarios that maybe with the last 7 minutes we have left, maybe is there another kind of a use case that, of course, you and the organization have seen that really gives another example of customer success around rapid start, how people are taking advantage of your various IP solutions? Is there another example that you'd like to share?
I mean, a lot of our IP is intentionally simple by design because it's a starting point. So a lot of our customers are looking at, okay, this is a great starting point. Now let's take this further, a little further, a lot further, wherever they may want to go. And so they're looking for services. Not every ISV provides services. Many of them just create a solution, sell it, and provide support. Some of them may do some onboarding, but not a lot of ISVs are necessarily also SIs. They focus primarily on their ISV solution. But there are a lot of us out there that do both. That create an ISV solution, and our ISV solutions are primarily been created to drive SI services. So this really led us to looking at the SI services model either first regular SI or in support of an ISV solution like Rapid Start, and looking at how it's historically been done, and frankly just the battle with the clock. Because so many services models are based on hours. At their root, they're somehow based on hours. And even in our case, we used to sell blocks of hours to customers, and then we'd work with them until the block was depleted. And for a customer, it was kind of like this hourglass that they tipped over when they started with us. And the challenge that we had was we really couldn't get that customer to stop staring at the hourglass. They just were staring at it, just watching the hourglass. And when they're so focused on the time, there's no way they're ever going to get the most out of the platform, whether it's Dynamics, whether it's Rapid Start. They're never going to get the most out of the platform if they can't take their eye off that hourglass, which led us to thinking about whether the time was right for a subscription model. Is there a way that we could come up with a fixed cost subscription that includes deployment, customization, everything we're doing today, basically, but eliminate that hours, just eliminate that from the equation. And Microsoft has gone so far with low code, no code
Mhm.
configuration. Our internal team makeup has changed dramatically over the years from being developer heavy to more analyst, if you will, heavy. We have our own internal citizen developers, if you will,
Mhm.
certainly more capable than a customer's citizen, but they're highly trained citizens, but they're not coders.
Mhm.
And so we launched a solution last year called the Works from Forceworks, which is essentially a subscription model for everything that we're doing today except development code, which, thanks to you guys, development code has been minimized, compared to what it was before, which is what let us feel comfortable enough that it was time. What I'd like to see now is more partners exploring that model, whether in support of their ISV solution or direct. We wrote a white paper on it for both customers and partners. It's available at forceworks.com. It's free download. It's about 35 pages, kind of going into the pros, cons, what you'd need to do as a customer, what you'd need to do as a partner to be able to prepare. Kind of what we've learned over the last year, which is a lot,
Mhm.
about trying to create a being a first subscription service that's including deployment, customization, everything, not just
Mhm.
support agreements, which are fairly common, but trying to wrap that whole enchilada into a monthly fee. All of our customers are on it, the blockchain customers on it. We've got the largest global yacht brokerage in the world is on it. We've got every one of the customers has moved to that. It's been a good model. We're still fine tuning, fine tuning. I definitely think it's going to be the model of the future because the difference that it has actually had in working with the customers when you eliminate the clock, just get rid of it, and they're
Yeah.
not thinking about hours or time anymore is profound. It is profound, the difference in the relationship and what customers are able to accomplish when they stop looking at that clock. So I can't, the smartest decision I've ever made, and I'm an old guy. So I recommend people look at it.
Okay, that's great. Well, I appreciate that, Steve. That's great insight. And I assume this is the guide, forceworks.com/get the guide, so people can take a screenshot. Okay, fantastic. So that's a good segue with about a minute and a half left. Maybe you could talk about what are some of the next steps. So people who would like to learn more, and also, so a couple of things. Either, hey, a Microsoft seller listening to this going, oh my gosh, I had no idea that Forcework existed. I mean, most people should because you've been doing this for a while, but maybe we could talk about either a Microsoft employees listening to this, another partner going, oh, this is super interesting. Maybe I should partner with Steve and his organization, or a buyer and customer, another Gary D listening to this. Maybe you can touch upon what some of the next steps people would take.
Yeah, I mean, we've got about probably about a third of the deployments of Rapid Start, which is at over, I don't know, over 100,000 users out there. About a third of those deployments were actually partners that installed it for their customer, partners providing
Okay.
the services. That's great. Looks good for our telemetry. We don't make any money off of it, but that's fine. So we've got partners just kind of on their own. We don't really have a partner program for a free app, right? So you just install it and use it. So it's been a good tool for partners that either we've got some partners that have built their own ISV solutions on top of it.
Mhm.
Um, One of the challenges for an ISV thinking about building a solution that's going to sit on Dynamics to do something is that that customer has to first make the decision of Dynamics versus a competing product, and they have to make the decision to pay the cost of Dynamics before that ISV even gets into the conversation. If Microsoft loses that customer to another solution, that ISV has no gain.
That's right.
So building a version of their solution that can sit on Rapid Start, which is cheap and it's $5, this opens the door for them to be able to kind of go direct to end customers, say, hey, we have a solution, you know, included with our solution that covers everything. So we've had several ISVs that have a Dynamics version that have created a version that will run on Rapid Start. Not difficult to do. They just have to untie some dependencies here and there. Just so they have a different path to go direct to
Mhm.
customer with their ISV solution. From a customer standpoint, there's frankly not a better way to get started easily,
Great.
simply than Rapid Start. You can start a platform with nothing and go build your own, or you can start on Dynamics, which is Dynamics. A rapid start, especially if if you know your needs are going to be custom or unique, it's just going to be a better place for customers to think about starting. And they can work with their own partner, or they can work with us. We've got this unique services and subscription model that they might want to explore. Every one of our customers seems to love it. We got testimonials all over the site from them. I did a webinar not too long ago, and I didn't have that chance to have the pre-call with them about what we're going to talk about because I was, tied up on some stuff. So we just took a chance and did the webinar live, and I was kind of stunned at what they said about it. So I was very happy. I was very pleasantly surprised and happy about how happy they were.
Yeah.
So that's always good.
I love it, Steve. I'm going to flash up a couple things. So again, this site goes directly to the many listings that Steve touched upon on the IP that exists on Microsoft App Source. So people don't want to take a screenshot. Unfortunately, it's not a hyperlink, but people can take a screenshot of that and go directly there later. I already talked about the many different testimonials and scenarios to learn more on forceworks.com. And then last is, of course, we're on LinkedIn. And so I'll encourage you to connect with either Steve or I, because of course, doing this on LinkedIn is a great way to stay digitally connected. But I know traditionally a lot of people like to just, hey, what's his email address? So I've been surfacing up the guest email address on here. So it's just pretty easy. Steve at forceworks.com, pretty easy to remember. So encourage everyone, if you have a question or this piqued your interest, reach out, and Steve and his team can definitely engage. So as we close out, Steve, any last minute parting words before we close out the
So for ISVs,
session?
I've written a lot of blog posts over the years, chronicling. You go all the way back to the history through my blog at stevemordue.com, and you can kind of see the entire history of the Microsoft ISV program from an ISV standpoint. All the good, bad, and ugly as it kind of has evolved to where it is today. Haven't been as active as I was before, but there's still quite a bit of content on there, and I'm still pursuing. And anybody who reads the blog knows that I give away all the secrets. We don't keep anything to ourselves, and I share every single thing we're doing. I've shared everything about this new services model, for people to just digest, think about, and make some decisions.
Great. Well, Steve, thank you so much. Truly appreciate your ongoing support of the ecosystem, the great partnership that you have with Microsoft, the IP that you've invested in taking time with, the impact you have with customers. So again, thank you everyone who may be watching live. If you're watching the replay, also thank you for making the time. We do these every Monday, again, when we have a guest, and continue to look for ISV Success, because we renamed the hashtag ISV Success Live. Encourage anyone to follow that. Look at the website, aka.ms/ISV Success Live, to see any of the replays, including this one that will, the moment this ends, the replay will be there. So if you missed any of the things or want to rewatch it from the conversation, feel free to do so. Thanks again, Steve, for the time. Have a great one, and thank you, everybody. We'll talk soon.